Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Being Conscious. We've been talking about the seven spiritual laws of success by Dr. Deepak Chopra, and this is the fourth law we are going to be discussing in this video. And the sound of this law would be liked by all. It is called the law of least effort. Because everyone in this reality we live in likes to put in the least amount of effort and wants to win. Wouldn't it be such a pleasant knowing to know that there exists a law called the law of least effort? It turns out it's not as simple as you and me think. So let us dwell into this specific law which says the law of least effort. If you observe nature, you will always notice there is less of resistance. Everything happens in its own pace. You plant a seed, it sprouts into a humongous tree at its own pace. There's no resistance. Deepak gives this example of Mother Nature in trying to build a foundation and a context about what this law means. Then he goes into granularities. Then he talks about the different nuances. One very peculiar and an important aspect, which is very important to be addressed here, is the fact that law of least effort is no way suggesting us to turn complacent or to become lazy, but it is inviting us to consider the intent behind our actions. Most of us are chasing the illusion of happiness through the whims of ego. Let me give you an example through which you can understand. The reason we want to achieve certain things in our life is not because we are going to feel great about it. Most of us are doing things which we don't like. Reason being, it doesn't matter whether I like it or not, but it's going to give me what I want. Now, if you further question them, what is it you want? They would say, I would want a hefty bank balance. I would probably want a situation where I don't have to think a second thought before I spend my money or wealth. I have all the luxuries at my disposal. So the point is that you are essentially chasing this illusion, you're chasing that particular thought of having a hefty bank balance because you think that after you have that, you will be able to fulfill all your desires. And the fun fact is that those desires are not your desires, those are the desires of the ego. Now, what do I mean by that? Ego is something which makes you feel fulfilled when you compare your accomplishment or achievement with someone else's. Meaning, you want to buy that car, you want to buy that Lamborghini because your neighbor bought it or because your friend bought it. And now you want to prove to the world that you are at par with your neighbor or with your friend. Now, this is a way to drain our vital force, to drain our resources of energy, is what Deepak is talking about. If you think about it, ego is what drains our energy the most. All our ambitions, all our goals, if you closely introspect and closely observe and be honest with yourself, there is a certain level of honesty which should be needed to assess yourself. Because there will be folks who would say, no, this is not my ego-driven goals, but this is my actual goals. But if you closely introspect, if you closely ask yourself this one important question, if you already had all the money in the world at your disposal, is this the work you would be doing? And for 95 to 99% of the population, the answer would be no. And it can also happen that not everyone are blessed enough to work in a profession they are passionate about, and that's perfectly fine. But the point here is to have a very clear distinction between what are the goals which are driven by the ego and what are the goals which are driven by this divine emotion called love. There are only two options which we have at our disposal. Either do what you love or love what you do. And this is the crux of what Deepak is saying. The law of least effort. You are going to expend the least effort only in the things which you love it, right? You don't have to put an effort, you don't have to work hard. I remember recently I heard Virat Kohli talk about in this interview, where the media person was saying, Virat, you work so hard, you are so disciplined in terms of your diet and exercise regime. And Virat said, no, I don't work hard at all because I love my job. So that's not hard work for me. I enjoy doing that. So Virat Kohli is essentially putting least effort in the sense that he is not using his energy conquering in trying to achieve the goals of the ego. But the thing which he's doing is naturally aligned with that emotion, that divine, potent, powerful emotion of love, he is automatically applying the principle, the law of least effort. And when he applies that law of least effort, the world in large looks at him and says, wow, what a man, how capable he is, how much of effort he has put. But the fun fact is, he has essentially not put effort, in the sense that since he is pursuing something through that emotion of love, through that emotion of passion, effort is actually not invested. To the contrary, that effort is operating through the law of least effort. And through that law of least effort, he is able to create magic. Now, this is not only about him. Any titan of any industry, whether it be SRK, whether it be any athlete in the world, they all are using the law of least effort. Whether they are aware of it or not is a different question altogether. But they are using this law, they are exercising this law to the fullest. Now, all this sounds hunky-dory, but how do we practically apply this law is what we'll talk about in the next part of this video. So Deepak gives us 3 potent strategies. These strategies, when you hear them from me, you might feel them, there would be a sense that these strategies seem passive. They don't seem to promote hustle culture. But there's a lot of intelligence behind these 3 potent strategies, and we'll talk about it one by one. The first thing which Deepak talks about is harnessing this power of acceptance. Now, when we talk about this word called acceptance, immediately there's a part of our brain which would reject and say that acceptance is for the weak, acceptance is for the meek. But if you closely observe it, and if you closely look into it, any change in this world can only happen through 2 stages. One is awareness of a need for change, of a scope of improvement. The second is accepting the situation as it is today. Because if you are in the zone of constant resistance, you probably will not do anything to change it. The acceptance is not for the weak. Acceptance, to the contrary, is for a warrior. And with that energy of acceptance, and Deepak says that so beautifully, he curates everything to the universe. This is something which I really like in his writing style. He says that every situation which you encounter in life, it took the entire universe to bring it to you. It took the entire universe to bring that situation, that person, that food, that opportunity to your plate. And when you resist it, when you push it, it is like you're fighting with the entire universe. Don't you think that's a bad bargain? Don't you think it's an unintelligent way of pursuing a fight? Essentially, it is, because you're resisting against the entire universe. Now, this doesn't mean that when I talk about acceptance, one word of caution is that it doesn't mean that we become complacent, we become passive. Acceptance, to the contrary, makes you proactive. There's a beautiful quote which I would like to share by Gautam Buddha in this context, where Buddha said something beautiful, and I will read it out for you. He said, "Serenity comes when you trade expectations for acceptance." Let me repeat that. Serenity comes when you trade expectations for acceptance. Now, serenity is an extremely powerful energy. It's a catalyst for powerful transformations. Any successful people, if you think, see Mahendra Singh Dhoni, he is an epitome of what it means to be serene. And when you are in that serene zone, you tend to take better decisions. There's a plethora of benefits what the single emotion of acceptance is. I can think about something which I read by Eckhart Tolle in the New Earth. He talks about 3 modalities of awakened doing. I will make a separate video on that particular topic, but that is one of the modes of awakened doing which Tolle talks about is also acceptance. And acceptance is for all the difficult things. Acceptance are for situations which you have to accept at the moment. There's nothing you can do. One simple example would be, let's say you are traveling to some place in a car and your tire punctures. Now you cannot resist with that situation. You cannot fight the situation at the moment. You can't drain your energy saying why it happened, why me. Instead, you will accept that the tire is punctured and the next step you will do is to change the tire. That is what acceptance means in this context. Acceptance doesn't mean that you do nothing about the situation. To the contrary, you acknowledge the reality of the situation as it is, as if you chose that situation. That is how much radical acceptance actually means. This is what radical acceptance actually means. Tolle goes one step ahead and says, accept the situation as if you chose it, as if you created the situation. And once you do that, you take universe on your side and the situation completely transforms 360 degree. The second point which Deepak Chopra talks about in executing, in practicing this law of least effort is the power of taking personal responsibility. Now, so many authors have talked about the power, the importance of taking personal responsibility. It is very easy to blame situations, people, and things all around us to justify why we are in a certain situation. But it takes a lot of courage to accept personal responsibility, and it takes a lot of self-respect. A person who takes responsibility of his life is a person who respects himself. Because if you are constantly complaining, nagging, and not taking accountability of where you are, what you're doing in life, and the consequences of your life, you are like that leaf, just who is at the mercy of the seasons in life. But when you take responsibility and you stop blaming the world for the situations, for the kind of situation you are in, you take back the power which you had given out to the world in so many conscious and unconscious ways. Now, how do we practice taking responsibility? Now, he defines responsibility beautifully. He says, having a creative response to a situation. Whenever we encounter a challenge, let us not view it as a challenge, let us view it as an opportunity. I'm reminded of the famous Thomas Alva Edison story in this context, where he said, I think this is a famous story and probably you guys know what this story is. So when Edison witnessed his entire life's work burning at his very eyes, and his son was absolutely catastrophized and he was feeling so bad about what happened, and he was literally weeping, his tears were all around the place, and he told his father, what the hell just happened? All your life's works are burning in front of our eyes. Then you know what Thomas Alva Edison said? I think this is a spectacular moment. We have this opportunity to rebuild all our work once again. And we have a ton of experience of 100 failures. So this time, we'll build a more robust system. We'll reinvent everything we invented in this industry or factory. Look at the mindset of Thomas Alva Edison. Had it been you or me, we would feel victimized. We would feel, why me? We would look up there and ask, why me? Now, this is the power of responsibility. Winston Churchill, the famous Winston Churchill, put it so well when he said, the price of greatness is responsibility. Any great person, any great titan in the world became great because he took personal responsibility. And the recipe of greatness is responsibility. So from today onwards, let us stop blaming the world, the situations, the people around us, and respect yourself so much that when you take responsibility of your life in your hands, then there's no one to blame. You are absolutely accountable for whatever happens in your life. The third point, which Deepak talks about in law of least effort, is about practicing defenselessness. Now, what does this mean? This is very interesting. Most of us, some of us, have this habit of trying to convince your viewpoint on the other person. Now, the intentions might be really good, the intentions might be divine, and we would really like to have some amount of betterment through our advice in the other person. We would like to convince them to a different reality, and we try to put in so much of arguments to prove our point that we often forget that there's no point of trying to convince someone who is trying to be an ostrich. There are people out there who would, even if you tell them the truth in the face, even if you talk to them about esoteric wisdom, a practical wisdom, a practical knowledge, there would be a group of folks who would condone it, who would resist it. And there are some well-mannered people who try to convince them, drain themselves off, they try to curate evidences and try to drain them their entire force of energy in trying to pursue something which is mindless, baseless, useless. Because there's nothing you can convince to the other person. The only person you can convince or you can provide some narrative is a person who has an open eyes, who is not playing ostrich. So stop resisting people who don't buy your belief systems and practice defenselessness. When you practice defenselessness, when you are in that zone of non-resistance, the entire universe is by your side. Swami Vivekananda put it so well when he said, stop arguing the moment you know what you're telling is the truth. Stop arguing the moment you know what you're telling is the truth. Because truth doesn't need argument. Truth, the sun doesn't need evidence for its presence. It's omnipresence, it's inevitable. So these are the three potent ways through which you and me can practice the law of least effort. Hope you really enjoyed this video, and in the next video we'll complete this series which we started on the 7 spiritual laws of success. Post that, I have a ton of content which I'll be regularly uploading in this channel. If you really love this channel, if you really like the idea of sharing wisdom, which can really bring about a paradigm shift in one's consciousness, do share this content with a couple of your friends and well-wishers or anyone who would benefit from this kind of content. Thank you so much, and I'll meet you in the next video. Bye.